Hello everybody, and it's time for me to go over my August wrap-up. Now, August was a month in which I surprisingly read quite a fair few things. I read about 3,900 pages in August, mainly because I had some really thick stuff to go through, which also means that, this is an amazing page count, but for September I need to read about 1,000 more even, so we're climbing the page count in the hope that that means that in September my page count is also doable. So let's just go over what I read in the month of August. So I started off by reading Spy X Family Volume 1. So this is the first one in a new manga series by Tatsuya Endo. I say new manga series, it's new to me. So this is a manga series in which we're following a sort of like created family. Basically, the father is somebody who is a spy, and his next mission is basically to try and infiltrate some sort of an academy to get close to a character who is the sponsor or the owner of that. I don't fully remember. But so in any case, yeah, I think more like a sponsor. I think he's the father of a child who goes there, and so he basically tries to recruit a child and a wife in order to be able to make it into this academy, because it's quite a difficult academy to get into. And so the woman he ends up accidentally choosing as his wife turns out to be an assassin, actually. He doesn't find this out, we as a reader find this out, and the child who he chooses is actually a psychic, so she can read his mind, and that's why she's able to kind of answer everything in a way that he wants to be answered, so that he thinks like, oh, this is the perfect child to match to my mission. But so yeah, this is a manga series in which we'll be following this family. I have read the first one, and I will already spoil, but at the end of this video I should normally have talked about the second one, because I've also read the second one within this series. So I really enjoyed both of these. I'm curious to see how long we're going to keep up sort of like the family members not knowing about each other's secrets type of deal. I'm happy to keep that going for a little bit longer, but I do hope that at one point in time we get to know all these secrets about one another, because currently, of course, a lot of the humor is coming from like miscommunication, in the sense of them like not knowing certain things about each other or misinterpreting things about each other. But I really enjoyed the manga in any case. Then, first big chunker for the month. I do believe that I've already read a little bit within the month of July, so that this was mainly just like rounding it off in the month of August. But that is The Veiled Throne, book number 3 in the Dandelion Dynasty. And I shall also talk about this one together with the next one, because that's kind of what I also finished, is Speaking Bones, the 4th book in the Dandelion Dynasty. So let's just say massive page count for the month of August. So I've been going through the Dandelion Dynasty so far throughout this year. The intention had been to kind of take 2 months for each book, but then I really didn't get properly started for the first half of this year. So yeah, I had to kind of push them all a little bit closer to each other. But that was also fine, because I did really have a good time with this entire series. So it is a Chinese history inspired series in which we're looking at the rise basically of a dynasty, and then the struggles that they face once they're at the top. There's a lot of political intrigue in there, court drama, there is an invasion from a new people to deal with throughout the series as well, and it is a series that spans a lot of time, and in which we're going to be introduced to a ton of characters as well. So it is like very much epic fantasy, huge cast of characters, huge amounts of events taking place, very big stakes, heartbreak, but also very loving moments as well. And so there are characters that I really enjoyed reading from a whole lot. There's a character that I despised by the end of this, who actually in the first book was one of the characters that I found to be most promising. So I've really enjoyed going through this series. I will say that the first one was probably my least favorite, because it's one in which I definitely didn't really have a big emotional connection to any of the characters yet. There were some characters that I had intrigue about, and I think the one character that I was like most hopeful for like died 2 chapters after we were introduced to them. So that was like, it reminded me of Game of Thrones in that sense, because like in Game of Thrones, the character that was like most instantly intriguing to me isn't like they died, but the reason why they were intriguing to me was sort of like their sense of adventure and their sort of like mischief that they got off to, and then they, you know, like fell off the tower in like the first chapter we read about. You know, like their adventuring days are not yet over, hopefully, you know, at that point, but then you already know that their story is going to go in a very different direction than what you were kind of like excited about seeing that character do. So yeah, I really enjoyed the series a whole lot. I might still do a video like talking about like who this series would be good for, because I definitely do think that it's not for everybody, but I might still do that. But yes, I really enjoyed those books. I gave none of them 5 stars in the end, just because it doesn't have that 5-star feeling for me, but there were definitely a lot of 5-star moments in it. It's just that, you know, with a book that is like 1,000 pages long, in the case of the final one, there's also more of a possibility for it to slightly fall off of a 5-star because of moments that drag a little bit more, or because of structural things and things like that. But so yeah. Next up, the next thing that I finished is The Rights of the Reader by Daniel Pennac. This is a short book which is basically him talking about the joy of reading and the joy of sharing a reading, but they're kind of also talking about like the way that we potentially like teach reading in a wrong way, where we're very much focused on understanding the letter of the word and on kind of the technical aspects of it, so that we don't foster the love of reading enough, even though that is, you know, what makes somebody a reader. Somebody stays a reader because of the fact that they love reading. People who have come to associate reading with, you know, like having to write essays for school, or having to analyze every thing that is said within a book, oftentimes will kind of fall off of reading because of the fact that teachers have kind of given them an impression of reading that doesn't suit what they like to do, whereas people who tend to stick with reading, a lot of them do so because they have known the joy of getting lost in a book, of completely finding themselves absorbed. I have a video about that, in which I kind of look at the rights of the reader as he introduces at the end of this book, and it kind of modernize them, or like discuss my opinion about these rights in the setting of like today, because this book is very much published in like the 20th century, and so in our 21st century world there are definitely a few evolutions when it comes to technology to begin with, but also when it comes to the prevalence of social media that do have a little bit of an impact on my opinion about these. And then that reminds me that I definitely should still film the second half of that video talking about the final 5 rights. Then I finished a short story, so I was also taking part in Nevermoreathon, which is organized by Denise from the channel Chaos in Bookland, and her readathon was basically based on Nevermore Academy, on the series Wednesday. The series is called Wednesday, right? Unfortunately, I didn't, like, I tried to get into the TV show for this readathon, but it's just not really, it didn't really grab me, and I'm not watching so little series nowadays that, you know, like, if it doesn't instantly grab me, then, you know, it's already lost me. But for this round of Nevermoreathon, we were focusing on Edgar Allan Poe. Every team was like the name of a short story by Edgar Allan Poe, and one of the prompts was also to read an Edgar Allan Poe. And so I read The Telltale Heart, which is a reread for me. This is basically the first Poe I was introduced to. This is a story that we listened to in high school for Dutch class, and so I do still, like, I have fond memories of that experience. And I also, later on within a month, in order to get as many points as possible for the readathon, still read 2 other short stories. I read The Cask of Amontillado, which is very, very short. I'd never heard it before, and I did quite enjoy it. And then we had The Fall of the House of Usher, and I gotta say that I felt like I none of my attention was grabbed by this story. I was listening to it, but the same can be said for the Cask of Amontillado, and I listened to that like right before listening to the Fall of the House of Usher. And with the Fall of the House of Usher, I just at some point I was like, I have no idea what's happening. So I don't know whether that is just that the Cask of Amontillado needed less of my attention, but so I gotta say that I didn't like my experience with the Fall of the House of Usher was just like, eh? Next up, I finished The Safekeep by Yael van der Woude. This is a Dutch novelist, but the book is originally written in English and has won the Women's Prize, I think, and the Booker Prize, or at least it was shortlisted for the Booker Prize, right? Last year. I enjoyed this book to some extent, but so it's a book about a woman who is basically living alone in her ancestral home, and is very much kind of stuck in the past. It seems like she's very much sort of like hanging on to the way things have always been done, and like everything needs to be in its right place, and like she's very much like concerned about people taking stuff from the house because she feels like there are stuff disappearing from the house all the time, and she seems very rigid and very sort of like set in her ways and not open to other people, other experiences, other opinions and stuff like that. And then her brother, who's actually entitled to the house, who should actually be inheriting the house, but he's always lived a very sort of like frivolous life, going from one girl to the other, so she is quite convinced that he will never settle down and never claim the house. He brings home a girl, and he has to go away for business reasons, I think, and as a consequence this girl basically spends a month or so together with our protagonist in this house. However, there's a lot of friction between the two of them because this girl is of course invading into our protagonist's space, and our protagonist, who is very rigid and very clingy to like her way of doing things, her mindset very much clashes with a more spontaneous open-mindedness of this new woman. But so our protagonist was a very annoying protagonist to read from. You know, she's very closed, and also you as a reader experience this closeness in her thought pattern. It's not like you as a reader get so much closer to her. You do know more about her because you get to see her internal monologue, of course, but like it's not it's not to such an extent that you understand her reasoning, understand why she is the way that she is, why she cannot have people do this or that in a certain way, why it has to be the way that she does. It's not like you get to understand these motivations of her at the beginning, at least, because she's so closed off that it also seems like internally she's shut off from a lot of her memories as well. There's a lot of stuff that she doesn't seem to remember, or that she's blocked from her memory. But I will say that towards the ending the book definitely was able to hook me more. It's not like I didn't enjoy the beginning, but it was very frustrating to read from her perspective, so that definitely made it a little bit more of a difficult book to kind of like enjoy, because of having this protagonist character, that it was like a chore to be in her mind. But as we get further along in the book, it definitely becomes more interesting, and there's an aspect to the storyline that is introduced that I didn't necessarily fully see coming from the beginning, though I did think a thought early on in the book that was like, oh, I wonder if, and then it turned out that that was indeed the point of the book, and that was an interesting aspect to bring into it, and an interesting sort of like debate to carry into this book, and to carry into this book in this way. But so yes, I am having to keep that very vague, because that is definitely sort of like the big plot twist of the book that I cannot just reveal to you guys here. Next up, I read Paladin's Grace by T. Kingfisher. It's the first book in a series, and I love this one. So I definitely have added the second book into my one to read, and as soon as I get like a little my TBR, so the physical books on my TBR, down a little bit further, I do think that I'm gonna just like purchase the next one so that I get around to it sooner rather than later. But so in this one we are following a paladin called Stephen. Stephen was in service to a god, but then one day his god died, and so all of the paladins kind of went berserk, and some of them even killed people around them because they were just basically out of control and just fully enraged but not aware of the acts that they were performing. At this point in time, they are now in service of the rat, who has taken them in, despite them no longer having a god, and despite there being this threat that potentially they will go berserk again, because nobody really knows what happens when a god dies. And so Paladin Stephen is basically going about his days in service to the rats when he meets with his perfumer, who basically is just like pretending to be like out on the street with him to avoid the attentions of another guy on the street, and he will get involved with his perfumer due to circumstances that happen later on in the book. But I really love this one. A very slow burn romance, very much like a will they won't they, dragged out throughout most of the book. There is a cute little cat. It's like a raccoon type of cat. It looks like here. I don't fully remember what it was called. Like I kind of imagined it more like a seal and a cat based on the name, but I don't really remember what the name was of the cats in any case. We have a friend who is a spy for another kingdom, which also introduces a lovely element to it. Our paladin is like green flags all around. You know, he's a guy who has suffered a lot, and he's very much in a depressed state of mind to some extent, but he is calmed down by knitting, and he's knitting clothing for like all of his paladin friends. The brotherhood between the paladins is very lovely to read about. The relationship between Stephen and Grace is lovely to see unfold, and there are also some sort of like less nice things going on because there's somebody beheading people in the city, and that is definitely also something that we will be trying to figure out throughout this book. But yes, I enjoyed this one a whole lot, and I definitely want to continue on. And then, no, it's not the final thing for me to talk about, but the final physical book that I have with me here is The Water Outlaws by S.L. Huang. And in this one we are following the story starts off with these two friends. One is a arms instructor in the army, and the other is just like an official, I think. And so the arms instructor, Lin Chong, when she finds out that her friend has basically been asked to meet this general of the army in private, she is concerned about his intentions because he has a little bit of a reputation with the women. And so she joins her friend on this meeting, and everything seems to be going as normal. So she's thinking like, I overreacted, I shouldn't have. But then the general kind of asks her to stay back when her friend, when the meeting is over, and then he tries to rape her. She fouls his plans, but as a consequence he has her arrested for trying to have him killed, and so her entire reputation and career is now distraught, and she is sent off to an outpost somewhere as a criminal to undergo a prison charge over there. However, her friend organizes for her to be kidnapped along the way, to be saved along the way, so that she can find some path in freedom. And so we follow her, so the arms instructor, Lin Chong, as she gets involved in this sort of like outcast society of bandits. Most of them are female, but some of them are also male, and she tries to help them train in order to prepare for if somebody is going to come after them, or for them to be able to defend themselves better. Meanwhile, the other friend that we originally saw, what was her name again? I'm trying to think if that says so at the end. But the end is only about Lin Chong. So her friend basically is recruited by the chancellor, I think, of this imperial structure to help him develop a new sort of weapon. I liked this book, but I never flew through it. It was always a little bit of a struggle to keep on reading. It wasn't like I was dreading picking it up. After a while I was, but it was mainly because of the fact that it felt like pages were going by so slowly for me, and that, you know, like if a chapter was 10 pages, like 5 pages in I would be looking at like, okay, when is this chapter over? And not out of like boredom with what was happening or anything like that. I guess it's just something with the writing style that probably just didn't work with me. I was just never sucked in, engrossed, carried along. It was always just like I was going through the motions with this book, but I was never fully invested in what was going to come. And so unfortunately this didn't fully work for me. I do have my eye on reading another S.L. Huang in 2026. Another book by her is going to come out. She does have other stuff out already now as well that I could try. But I think like I'll give that one a go, and if that doesn't work for me, then I guess it really is just like the writing style of S.L. Huang that doesn't work for me, because I did in principle enjoy the, you know, like Chinese setting, though I was reading 2 books with a Chinese setting at the same time. Sprints are over, so I have to pause and get back to you guys. But so yeah, the main thing with this book is that I think is that, you know, it never made me really reflect, never made me go like, things in it never made me think about other things, and never made me question my way of thinking and stuff like that. So in the end, I think it is part of the series, in which case I'm not going to continue on with the series, but I do still want to give S.L. Huang another chance with a later book. And then the final thing that I have to talk about is Flashlight by Susan Choi. And this is an issue because I don't know what my opinion is about this book. So Flashlight is the first of the Booker longlist books that I've read. It's the only one I read in August. I was supposed to read 3 books in August and 3 in September to be kind of halfway through by the time the shortlist is announced. But as every single time that I do, well, not every single time, I finished it once, but as most often happens, it is once again the lowest priority, and so it is probably gonna be the case that I'm not gonna finish the entire long list, but yeah. Let's continue trying our best to fit some of them in at least. But so Flashlight was one of the ones that I was most interested in. I didn't intend to put it in August because I wanted to put like the shortest ones on there, and Flashlight is one of the longer ones, but it is one that was available through my library, and my hold actually came in at the beginning of August, so I was like, okay, I'll just take it out from the library, and then I guess this is the first one that I'll be reading. And the same has actually just happened. I just got a notification that one of the other ones that the library has, the hold has come through, and I'm like, no, not during Magical Readathon. But so, Flashlight is a book in which we're looking at like the premises is short. We just see like we have a girl and her father who are walking on a beach in Japan. Her father is Japanese Korean. I mean, he's a Korean born in Japan because his family fled from Korea during a time of poverty to look for a better future in Japan. In Japan, he's always grown up with sort of like the prejudice surrounding his Korean heritage, but so he has found his way back to Japan after having raised his child mainly in the US at some point in time. And so they're walking along a beach when all of a sudden her father disappears. She has very little memory of the night. She cannot really say what has happened, and that's the premise. There are elements to this book that worked. There are Basically, we're reading from a few perspectives. So we read from the father, we read from the child, and we read from the mother mainly. I think there might be like one chapter or something from another. Yeah, there's like one chapter from another perspective later on in the book as well. And I enjoyed the storyline told from the perspective of the father the most. Then from the child, but mainly early on in the book when she's still a young kid versus later on. And then I really struggled with the perspective of the mother, which is sad because the mother actually has muscular dystrophy like I do, so it's a character that I would have loved to care more about. But I really struggled with reading from her perspective and with continuing on. This is another book for this month where I really struggled with the page count, where I definitely found myself kind of like looking ahead and being like, how many more pages before I get to the end of the chapter. This definitely always happened with the perspective of the mother. With the perspective of the father, it was much easier for me to get through. And I feel like this book is a little bit too disparate for me, because there are things that we go into the second half of the book that are definitely like looming in the first half of the book, but it feels like a very different book in the first half versus the final like third or something like that. And that is a section that really flew by for me, that I was really interested in and really engaged with. And I feel like definitely sort of like, if we think of it in thirds, then I would say the first third I enjoyed a lot. The last third definitely was a section that really had me hooked. But then the middle section is the one where I was kind of struggling with, and when we are very much focusing on the mother and the daughter perspectives, which especially in that book really don't fully work for me. And the reason I say that I feel like it's too many different things at once is because it just feels like a very different book, and like it's about like the direction of the book is very different to what we then end up getting in that final third. And so yeah, it didn't fully work for me, but there were aspects of this that really did work for me. There were parts of this that really interest me. There is one storyline in here that clearly really interested me, and the author did a good job of focusing on rounding out all of her characters and their storylines. Unfortunately, I just didn't care about those. I only cared about the one, apparently. So yeah, mixed bag for me for my first Booker long list read. I end up having to give this like, I don't know, a 2-3 star, somewhere in there, because I just didn't care about this one enough to give it more than that. It was a book that had one storyline that would have been a 4-star for me, but yeah, there was just too much of its page count that was spent on stuff that didn't interest me, and that I really had to struggle with. But so yeah, that is my August reading. That's everything I read in the month of August. Mixed bag, as I indicated, just because of that ending with those final 2 books, because I would say that the rest of it was all very successful. So for the most part, I had a really good and easy time with my reading in the month of August. There's just like these 2 little outliers that, you know, I struggle a little bit more with. That was my August wrap up. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts were on them, and yeah, see you guys in the next video. Bye!